Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of Rao's IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading from our UPSC Civil Services examination perspective. Now today let us take up the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 22nd of September 2021. The news to be taken up has been displayed on your screen and time stamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. Further in the description you can also find the yearly compilation of DNS quiz from October 2020 to September 2021. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion from our prelims and mains perspective. Now let's take up our first article for discussion. Now this article appears on page number 6 and it says Dravidam 2 as a time to reflect for action. Even as the DMK government celebrates the movement's icons, it must address newer challenges of the times. Now this article overall highlights some of the key concerns in the state of Tamil Nadu. However, from our examination perspective, let us go through some of the key highlights which becomes important for us from our examination perspective, especially with respect to GS paper 1 and also GS paper 2. Now the first point highlighted in this article is with respect to relation between poor education and labor force participation, especially in the informal sector. And because of poor education system in the country, most of the people end up in the informal sector. And according to the periodic labor force survey of 2018-19, it has been found that 62% of the workforce or workers works in the informal sector, whereas 82% of the workforce have no social security. And even among those people having a regular job and a stable income, 75.2% of them do not even have a proper written contract from their employer. So all these can be attributed to poor quality of education imparted in India across states and union territories. So from your prelims point of view, what you need to know is that the National Statistical Office, that is NSO, publishes the periodic labor force survey report. And this latest report has captured the employment related data for the period July 2019 to June 2020. Further, you also need to understand about labor force and workforce. So it says that labor force includes all the people who are presently employed or are searching for jobs. So those people who are also searching for jobs also becomes part of the labor force even though they are not employed. So as per the report, approx 52 crores people in India are a part of labor force, out of which 48 crores are employed and 3 crores are seeking employment or unemployed. So this is the meaning of labor force. So includes part of the population who are employed and also part of the population who are searching for jobs. However, workforce includes only those people who are presently employed. So this is the difference between labor force and workforce. So a statement based questions can be asked in your prelims with respect to the differentiation or with respect to this understanding of labor force and workforce. And also the fact that periodic labor force survey has been published by the National Statistical Office. So overall this article highlights the correlation of poor education and more people in the informal sector of the Indian economy. The next important point highlighted in this article is regarding improving learning outcome. And in this regard, this article says that states and union territories can improve their learning outcomes by improving their performance in the performance grading index, which is now being released by Ministry of Education. So states and union territories can take steps accordingly to improve their performance grading index. So regarding performance grading index, it is a tool to provide insights on the status of school education in states and union territories, including key levers that drive their performance and critical areas for improvement. So performance grading index is given based on learning outcomes and quality, access to education, infrastructural facilities available at a school, equity, and also on the aspect of governance process. The next point highlighted in this article is regarding conversion of caste labor into wage labor. And this has happened, or this has been possible, because of increased industrialization in the country. The next important point highlighted in this article is that increased enrollment in higher education, not only in the state of Tamil Nadu but also in other states and union territories, does not always lead to employment creation. Now, the point highlighted here is that there have been mushrooming of private universities and schools and colleges. And in some of these private institutions, including schools and colleges, they do not have sufficient infrastructural facilities, including that of teaching staff. So, because of this lack of proper infrastructure, including teaching staffs, this hampers the quality of education which is being imparted in these schools and colleges. And this overall not only impacts the learning outcome of such students, but it also impacts in their employment opportunities or job prospects. So this is also one of the important highlights of this article, whereby the author suggests that there is a need to improve the infrastructure of not only public schools but also private schools and colleges. And lastly, this article highlights about the growing menace of violence, especially against women and also Dalits. Now, regarding Dalits, this article highlights that there have been increased violence against such Dalits who have improved their socio-economic condition. And at times, because of their improved societal or economic conditions, they are at times attacked. And these violence are also physical in nature. So this is one aspect which has been highlighted in this article with respect to increased violence, not only against Dalits, but also against women in India. So these can be said to be some of the learnings with respect to this article, especially from the perspective of GS paper 1 and also GS paper 2. So with this discussion, let's take up our next article. Now the next news to be taken up appears on page number 1 as a continuation on page number 9, and in the same context, an article on page number 6. Now this news on page number 1 and 9 says that there is no link between AUKUS and Quad as per the Government of India. And the Government of India, maintaining its strategic autonomy, has stated that the purpose of AUKUS is very different from that of Quad, as AUKUS outrightly is a security alliance, but the Government of India does not see Quad only as a security alliance. So it is in this context, this news on page number 1 also becomes very important. It says that amid AUKUS row, Modi speaks with Macron. Now, because of this AUKUS strategic alliance between Australia, United States and United Kingdom, it led to cancellation of contract with respect to submarines between Australia and France. And this has angered the French government. However, in this backdrop, Indian Prime Minister has spoken with the French President, showing solidarity with France. Now, this also means that there are high possibilities of strengthening of India-France relationship also from the perspective of defense manufacturing, thereby strengthening India's Make in India program. Now, apart from this development appearing on page number 1 and page number 9, where Government of India has said that there is no link between AUKUS and Quad, this news appearing as an article on page number 6 highlights the growing importance of Indo-Pacific region, various nations arming themselves against a belligerent China, and these nations also includes countries such as Australia, which so far had maintained a cordial relationship with China, especially on the perspective of their trade relationship. And the trade relationship between Australia and China over-empowered its security concerns. But now, after the AUKUS strategic partnership, this security concern of Australia in the Indo-Pacific, especially against a belligerent China, has also raised concerns in the Chinese background. And obviously, China has not liked this idea of Australia coming together or coming along with United Kingdom and United States as a security alliance. Now, here two things are to be understood. Number one, that United Kingdom through this AUKUS alliance also wants to appear as a dominant force in the Indo-Pacific region, and even France wanted to assert its dominance in the region. So all these developments becomes important, especially in the backdrop of upcoming Quad summit, which the Prime Minister of India will attend in Washington on 24th of September 2021. So far, India, maintaining its strategic autonomy, has said that there is no link between Quad and AUKUS. and has distanced itself from the strategic collaboration. Now, in this regard, we also need to understand the importance of Five Eyes, which is a collaboration of 5 countries with respect to intelligence sharing. Now, as you can see, in the Five Eyes, it comprises of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, United States, and United Kingdom. Whereas with respect to Quad, only Australia and United States are part of Quad, whereas New Zealand, Canada, and United Kingdom are not part of Quad. So, through Five Eyes along with AUKUS, United Kingdom is also planning to assert its influence in the Indo-Pacific region. So this is one of the development which has been highlighted in this region. Apart from this, even France wants to assert its dominance in the Indo-Pacific region. So it is in this backdrop this article says that nations such as Australia and Japan are arming themselves against a belligerent China. And even France does not want to miss the action in the Indo-Pacific region. So with respect to Japan, its defense white paper suggested that for the first time, it highlighted the urgent need to take stock of developments around Taiwan. Now this article suggests that this is a clear acknowledgement on Japan's part that its own security is linked to the stability in the Taiwan Strait region, where China has been continuously flexing its muscle. And this flexing of muscle by China in the Taiwan Strait has become a new norm. So Japan understands this contemporary reality and accordingly wants to arm itself in order to ensure its own security. Now with respect to Australia, this article suggests that Australia has been increasing the allocation of funds for its defense in the budget for the last 9 years. And for the financial year 2020-21, it allocated 34.84 billion US dollars. And this allocation represents a 4.1% hike over the previous years. So clearly Australia is also focusing on its defense and security apart from its economy. Further, the article says that AUKUS will also arm Australia with nuclear submarine from United Kingdom and United States, as this pact will facilitate the transfer of nuclear submarine propulsion and manufacturing technologies to Australia. Now this is important because this is the first instance of a non-nuclear nation acquiring such nuclear capability. And this is also important because Australia operating such advanced nuclear submarines will add a new dimension to evolving maritime security architecture in the Indo-Pacific region. So the point to be taken here is that a non-nuclear state is acquiring nuclear capability in order to ensure maritime security. Thus, maritime security has become one of the priorities for the Australian government. And in this regard, this article further says that there is also opportunity for the United Kingdom, not only through AUKUS but also through Five Eyes, which we have just seen. Now, this is an intelligence sharing alliance built among Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the United States. Now, in this backdrop of AUKUS, there is a silver lining for India as well, as there is a chance to further strengthen India-France relationship. So, in this backdrop of Australia cancelling the contract for submarines, this can be said to be a setback for France. However, this article says that this setback down under for France may spur France to focus afresh on partners such as India, which must strike a balance between continuing imports and implementing the all-important Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense manufacturing. Further, with respect to India and France bilateral relationship, the areas of defense and security cooperation, space cooperation, and civil nuclear cooperation constitute the pillars of India-France strategic partnership. Further, India and France also have a robust economic partnership. Another example of India-France relationship are Rafale jets and International Solar Alliance. So with respect to growing India-France relationship, it says that apart from these, India and France are also increasingly engaged in new areas of cooperation, such as maritime security in the Indo-Pacific region, counter-terrorism, climate change, renewable energy, and sustainable growth and development, among others. So clearly there is an opportunity for growing India-France relationship, especially in the field of defense manufacturing. And these can be said to be the key takeaways with respect to growing India-France relationship. So these three articles becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 2 under international relations. Now this is a developing story, so let's wait for the outcome of Quad Summit, which is scheduled on 24th September 2021. So after this discussion, let's take up our next article. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 7. It says, changing the agricultural exports basket. India has the potential to become a global leader in the food processing sector. So this article highlights about the importance of food processing sector and the need to expand export of such food processing sector. Now this article in this regard suggests that Indian agricultural export basket has been expanding over a period of years, and from the earlier traditional food commodities, it is slowly including also the non-traditional processed foods. And in this regard, according to a report of Ministry of Food Processing Industry, agricultural food and processed food products includes 11% of India's total export. Now, according to this article, it suggests that this 11% must be increased, especially pertaining to increase in export of processed food products from India. However, there are certain challenges in this regard. So as of now, this article suggests that primary processed agricultural commodity forms majority of exported foods from India, and in this regard the government needs to focus not only on primary processed agricultural commodity but also on secondary and tertiary processed agricultural commodities and also other processed food commodities. So overall this article says that with respect to increasing the export of processed food and processed agricultural commodities from India, there is a need to focus more on value added processed food products, as it will not only improve the export earnings but will also help to increase the farmers' income. Now, in this regard, it's important also to know about India's agricultural export policy vision. And according to this vision, it aims at harnessing export potential of Indian agriculture through suitable policy instruments in order to make India global power in agriculture and also raise farmers' income. So harnessing and improving the export potential of Indian agriculture is also part of India's agricultural export policy vision. And accordingly, India's export policy objective includes to double agricultural exports from present $30 billion to more than $60 billion by 2022 and thereafter reach export worth 100 billion US dollars or more in the next few years. And this can only be achieved through a stable trade policy regime. Now, another important point highlighted in India's agricultural export policy is to diversify our export basket. So, it is in this regard this article suggests to include processed agricultural commodities. To diversify destination and boost high value and value added agricultural exports, including focus on perishable. Further, to promote novel, indigenous, organic, ethnic, traditional and non-traditional agricultural products exports. Further, to improve an institutional mechanism for pursuing market access, tackling barriers, and to deal with sanitary and phytosanitary measures, which can be essentially said to be non-tariff measures. It further says to strive to double India's share in world agricultural exports by integrating with global value chain at the earliest, and also to enable farmers to get benefits of export opportunities in overseas market. Now, all of these objectives cannot be achieved if Government of India only focuses on agricultural products. So based on this policy, the article suggests that there is a need to focus more on value added processed food products, as it will also improve exports earnings and it will also help to increase and improve farmers' income. Now, regarding food processing, there are three types of food processing: primary food processing, secondary food processing, and tertiary food processing. Now, the primary food processing turns raw food into edible food. Now, this also includes agriculture, dairy, and poultry. Further, secondary processed food. Now, in this process, food is created from ingredients which are ready to use. For example, baking of bread from the dough or fermenting wine. And the third is tertiary processed food. Now, this is commercial food production for the processed food. So, as of now, regarding the export of agricultural commodities, the primary processed foods are in majority. However, export of processed food products is not growing significantly in the last few years. Now, supply chain in the food processing industry includes inputs, production, procurement and storage, primary processing, secondary processing, and then retailing. So, in this regard, some of the major challenges with respect to food processing sector are: the first point highlighted is with respect to supply chain infrastructural gaps. So, it says that there is a lack of primary processing, storage, and distribution facilities. So, here the government needs to address these gaps and improve primary processing, storage, and distribution facilities. So, with respect to supply chain in food processing, we are right now talking about lacunas in the stage of procurement and storage. Next, it talks about supply chain institutional gaps, especially with respect to procurement dependence on APMC markets. Next, it also talks about inadequate link between production and processing or lack of processable varieties. Further, it mentions about seasonability of operations and low capacity utilization. So, this also becomes another challenge for the food processing industry. Inadequate focus on quality and safety standards of the processed foods, and also lack of product development and innovation. So, these can be said to be the different challenges for the food processing sector in India. And each of these challenges must be addressed by the government in order to improve the export of processed food from India. So the question becomes that what needs to be done in order to improve or increase export of processed food from India. So the government need to diversify agricultural export basket of India. There's a need to increase share of secondary and tertiary processed food products from India. There's a need to address number of non-tariff measures imposed by importing countries, such as sanitary measures or environment protection measures, also measures with respect to pre-shipment inspection and other formalities. There's also need to address prohibition of meat and dairy based products which is imposed by different countries, as these countries do not import meat or dairy based products. Further, with respect to United States of America, there's a need to address the issue of export of processed food from India, as US has withdrawn generalized system of preferences. So this is something which can be sorted out with the United States of America, as India is also part of Quad. Further, shipments to US, especially with respect to processed food, requires additional health certificates. So again, this aspect can also be discussed with the United States of America. So these are some of the operational concerns highlighted in the article, especially regarding export of processed food and agricultural commodities from India. So as a way forward, this article suggests that there is a need to nurture food processing companies in India. There is a need to address the above mentioned challenges, especially pertaining to the export of processed food industries in India. There is a need to ensure low cost of production for the processed food industries in India. There is a need to fix higher standards for importing food items from different countries. Further, the government must encourage reputed brands and also other brands to export processed food from India. Further, there is a need to tap the global processed food export market. And lastly, the author suggests that competitive advantages which we have, especially with respect to export of agricultural commodities, must be utilized for export of processed food. So these can be considered as a way forward, especially with respect to improving export of processed food from India. So this article with respect to food processing becomes important, especially with respect to GS paper 3, and also questions can be asked in the prelims examination under the section of Indian economy. So after this discussion, let's take up our next article. The next article to be taken up appears on page number 8. It says Kasturi Ranjan to lead syllabus panel. 12 members chairing committee given a tenure of 3 years to draft framework. And the panel has been tasked to develop a new national curriculum framework. This framework is basically a guiding document to develop textbook, syllabus and teaching practices. Now, the government has given a tenure of 3 years to the committee to complete this particular task. So, while framing this national curriculum framework, this committee will frame 4 frameworks with respect to curriculum of school education, teachers education, a framework for early childhood education, and for adult education. Now, this topic of National Curriculum Framework for School Education has been discussed in detail in the DNS dated 23rd July 2021, where we discussed about the importance of National Curriculum Framework basically with respect to a better learning outcome, and also the fact that it forms the core of school education and also for activities in school. And this curriculum framework is with respect to the new educational policy of 2020. So this national curriculum framework for school education has been drafted keeping in mind the syllabus, textbook, teaching and learning process, sports and games for overall development of a child, physical education, dance, music, assessment, and also assessment and examination activities. So to learn more on National Curriculum Framework with respect to school education, you can go through the DNS dated 23rd July 2021, where various aspects and concerns of National Curriculum Framework has been discussed in detail. So this topic of National Curriculum Framework becomes important from the perspective of GS paper 2, especially with respect to issues relating to education, and questions can also be asked with respect to the objective of National Curriculum Framework in the prelims examination, especially with respect to rights issues and also with respect to public policies. So with this, let's take up our question for the day. Now, based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. The question is, which among the following country is not a part of Five Eyes? Options are A. New Zealand, B. Canada, C. United Kingdom, and D. Japan. Now, coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, reasonable restriction can be imposed on the freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(2) of the Indian Constitution on which of the following grounds? Options were security of the state, morality, and defamation. In this, the correct answer is all of them, that is 1, 2, and 3. So with this, we come to an end to today's discussion of important news appearing in the Hindu newspaper. Thank you for watching DNS.